If you're thinking about doing your first development, it can be very overwhelming.
So you don't need to know everything, but you do need to avoid the mistakes.
So I hear the same myth all the time. Oh, my neighbour's done it, so I can do it. Or I think I can fit one in the backyard. I have enough room. What you need to understand as a first-time developer, that every site is different. Rules change all the time. So when your neighbour developed, it may not be the same council regulations that could possibly prevent you from developing. Also, rules have changed recently, so you might actually have more opportunity than your neighbour did, because setbacks have changed and height restrictions have changed, and the materials you use on your facade now, those rules have changed. So relying on what your neighbour is doing is not a good indication of what your site can do and what potential your site has. So as a first-time developer, it's really important that you do two things. First is your due diligence on the potential of your site so that you are absolutely maximizing your value. That's number one. And number two, a first-time developer should definitely get the right team around them, which is what we call the A team. Now, we develop personally ourselves, aside from just from our clients, and we personally put together our A team as well, so that we can go into developments confident that we've got people around us that know what they're doing, that do their due diligence, and that's less risk for us. So that's what we want to talk you through today. If you can kind of get those two things right, you're really 80% of the way on there to getting your plans and permits. So we'll talk you through some of the things that do need to get checked at the start. So once you find a site, it's very, very important that you do what's called a site assessment. And this is what we do for clients. So it's checking your zoning, overlays, anything that might prevent you from developing. We've had a lot of clients that have already purchased property and then come and get a site assessment, and they realize that they have a single dwelling covenant on it. That happens so much. And then they try to, quickly scramble to get out of the contract. Site assessments are recommended to do before you purchase a property. You really, really need to understand what you can fit and what you can sell that for to understand your ROI. And you wouldn't want to be purchasing a property to develop when you don't know what your ROI is. And sometimes that's not always maximizing how many units you can get. It could be you're going to keep the front house and build in the back, because that's going to be the best option for you. First of all, it's a simple development. It's a quicker development. You've got the rent coming in from the front house while you're constructing in the back. So not everything is about finding the biggest block of land so that you can get 3 or 4 units on. We also look into minimum garden area. So every council has different rules. So say, for example, you've got 35% garden area. That means our building envelope, including the car accommodation, must be separate to your 35% garden area. We have to keep that. And those rules are in place because council does want to encourage area for children to play, green grass, backyards, everything like that is a must. And then you can build on the remaining land.
To add on to that, also the hard surface such as the driveway cannot be included in the 35%. So that's going to be removed, deducted from that as well.
Then you have your private open space requirements, you have parking requirements. So depending on how big the home is and how many bedrooms, that affects how many undercover parking spaces you have to provide. So we always look into all of that when putting together our concept plans. We also look at neighbours. So is your site going to overshadow the neighbour? That's really important. We look at setbacks. We look at, can you build on the boundary line? Is there going to be an issue? We look at trees. Trees are very important, and rules with trees are becoming more and more strict with the council. When it comes to mature trees, are they going to be anywhere near a new crossover that you want to create? Are they in the backyard? Is your development going to cause a problem with neighbours' trees? All of that gets looked into when you're looking to develop. So it's not as simple as just saying, my neighbour has done it, I can do it. These are all the different steps and the different boxes that you need to tick before you're applying for a permit. And of course, when we do site assessments, we also look at easements. That's also really important, not building over easements, and just finding out what your restrictions are. Okay, the next thing that we're going to go through is building your team and building the right team. Who do you need? Who do you even need during a development? Okay, so building your team. So stage 1 is obtaining your town planning and subdivision permit. So at this stage, you need your designer, could be a building designer, an architect, or a town planner that's going to do your drawings. And then you also, and do your application and work with the council. And then there's your consultants that also help with the application process. So that could be either your landscape designer to put together a landscaping plan, an arborist, which may be required, or a land surveyor to do a feature and level survey. So these are all, the initial consultants that you need to work with just to get that application prepared. Then once you go to stage 2, if you are wanting to construct, you'll need a build permit.
Stage 2. So ultimately, in order to get a fixed price contract as a builder, I'm going to need documentation like working drawings, structural engineering, civil drawings, soil report, energy report. There's some of the main documentations that I need in order to give a fixed price contract. So stage 2 is based on getting those documents.
And you might, if you're hiring a designer or someone like ISubdivide, we will consult with all of them and put all those. You don't need to go out and hire all those different consultants. It will usually get done by the designer or us, and we package all that up ready to give to a building surveyor who then issues the build permit.
Yeah.
And then stage 3 is the construction phase. So that's where you have to hire a builder, and then you can get a project manager if you wanted someone to work with the builder, or you work with the builder yourself. However, if you haven't subdivided yet in that process, you will still need to do it at the end. That's a possible next step. And also, you don't have to subdivide.
No, so you don't have to subdivide. Ultimately, there's this myth that if you've built units, they're separately titled as soon as you complete the construction. That's not true. You do have to go through, if you've got a subdivision permit, the permit's going to give you conditions of the permit. So you've got to meet those conditions. Once you've met those conditions, then you go to the titles office, you'll get a certificate of compliance, go to the titles office, and then you're subdivided. And ultimately, you do not need to subdivide. So a lot of clients will build 3 units or more, don't want to pay the open space contribution tax, which could be tens of thousands of dollars. So then they just rent out the houses, and when they want to sell each individual house, that's when they'll have to get it subdivided. So you could potentially keep them, all the units on one title, continue getting your rent. They're still going to have separate rates, separate meters, and water meters and electricity and all that type of stuff. So they're going to be individual homes, but they're just not separately titled. When you're wanting to sell one or all of them, then you look at potentially subdividing the block.
Thanks, guys. If you do want us to do your due diligence and check what is possible on your site, you can purchase a site assessment from us. The link is down below. It costs $195 and it takes us approximately 7 working days to complete. Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you soon.
See you guys.